WMI and CIM Working with CIM Sessions. One of the new concepts introduced in PowerShell version 3 is the CIM session. It's a persistent connection to a remote computer for the purposes of querying and manipulating the repository. Now, you might think, okay, if this is version 3, that means it's inapplicable if I have computers running version 2, but that's not true. As I'm going to show you, you can actually open a CIM session using one of two protocols, including the older DCOM protocol that will work with your down-level computers. When you're connecting to a computer using the DCOM protocol, the remote computer only needs to be running the WMI service. It does not need to have PowerShell installed at all. So this is a very useful set of tricks. I'm going to show you some tricks for managing CIM sessions, how to create a persistent connection to a remote computer, utilize it, and then close it down when you're done. I'll talk about how to make CIM sessions that use both the new WMI protocol as well as the older DCOM protocol, meaning using a single set of commands, you'll gain the ability to talk to different versions of Windows in a consistent fashion. And along those lines, I'll show you how to use those different session types, WMI and DCOM, in combination so that you can treat a whole group of computers as a single unit, whether they're running an older version of Windows or a newer version that supports WMI. Because CIM is a feature of PowerShell version 3 and later, I'll be performing all these demonstrations on my Windows 8 computer, which has PowerShell version 3 running. So let's pop that right open. Now, just to kind of demonstrate some of the differences that we're going to experience here, I want to try using getWMIObject. Now, this is the old command that uses distributed COM or remote procedure calls to talk to computers. So I'm going to see if I can talk to the computer I have called member. Now, I've not done anything really to that computer. It's a Windows Server 2012 machine. Its firewall is probably going to block this. So let's see if we can just pull up its BIOS information. Just want to kind of verify that WMI does not work. So the old way is not going to talk to this computer because it's kind of tough to actually, look at the network and see what kind of traffic is going across it. This way I can just confirm that RPCs will not work. We just have to wait for the timeout to happen. Okay, there it is. The RPC server is unavailable. So now let's try get CIM instance. We'll try the same computer. I'm actually going to give it the fully qualified domain name here just to make sure it can resolve that name. We'll try the same class. And almost instantly, it comes right back. So that tells me that WMI, the new protocol, WS management, is working to that computer. And that makes sense because WS management is enabled by default on Windows Server 2012 and later. WMI, the old way, isn't working. Now it's actually enabled on that computer, but the firewall doesn't have a default exception for it. So that's why I'm not getting through. Okay. I also want to make sure that, so I've got this old computer. Well, not that old, but it's a Windows 7 computer. You've seen me working on it. Let's see if the old protocol will get through to it. And we'll give it a fully qualified domain name. That'll make the DNS go a little faster. All right, that works on it. Now, if I try get CIM instance with that one, doesn't work. It said it couldn't talk to it. So all of this, so far, for me at least, makes sense. Let's draw a quick little picture, though, and review what we're dealing with. We've got two possible protocols that we could be talking about, WMI and DCOM, which is using remote procedure calls. On my member computer, which is 2012, this works, this does not. This would if I opened up the firewall. So that's the problem, is the firewall is blocking it. On my Windows 7 computer, this doesn't work because it physically doesn't possess that technology. It's because I would need a newer version of PowerShell, and it's only running version 2. But the DCOM way does work. So having verified what protocol works with what computer, I now want to talk about persistent sessions with these things. So we're going to switch over to using all the CIM commandlets. Now, you should have already been through the nuggets where we talked about remoting sessions, and we ran commands like get PS session. I don't have any open. There is a separate type of session called a CIM session. get command, noun, CIM, get CIM session, new CIM session, remove CIM session. These are roughly analogous to the regular remoting sessions. They do communicate by default over WSMAN. What they're designed to do, though, is keep a persistent CIM connection to a remote computer. So I don't have to spend the overhead of spinning up that connection, using it, and then shutting it down if I plan to hit a computer over and over and over. So nice, easy example. As I did in remoting, I'm going to save my session objects into variables to make them easier to refer to. And I'm going to use variable names that are actually the same as the computer I plan to connect to, because that way it'll be a little bit easier for me to remember which one goes with which computer. So new CIM session. New CIM session. There we go. And this is going to be computer member.lab.pri. Okay, that should work. Let's do a get CIM session. You can see that I do have that same session open, available, ready to go. Now, real quick, just for fun, member2 equals new CIM session. I'm going to go to the same computer, but just give it its non-fully qualified domain name. See, that's taken a little bit longer. Couldn't process the request because I've got some DNS stuff or possibly Active Directory stuff. This does require mutual authentication. So a lot of times when you're using these CIM sessions, you're going to need to specify the fully qualified domain name. I've got some goofiness here in my lab with DNS because I want my client computer to be able to talk to the internet and to my domain. So it's got two network adapters, and that kind of multi-homing a client can give it DNS issues as well. By using the fully qualified domain name, it kind of figures out much faster what interface it's supposed to talk to and what DNS server it's supposed to use. So member2 contains nothing. Member1, or just member, contains that. Now let's create a second CIM session to Win7. I already said, let's see, win7.lab.pri. I already said that the CIM connection, the WSMAN protocol, is not going to work with Win7. Oh, session option, there we go. So I need to tell the command to create this connection using a different protocol. And the way you do that is to give it a session option. New CIM session option protocol decom. So this is a parenthetical command, right? So you got to remember what's going to happen here. This is going to run first. The result of the new CIM session option command is a session option object that gets fed to the minus session object parameter. That tells this command to use that option, meaning to use that protocol, when connecting to this computer. So let's push the button, see what happens. Win7. There we go. Now if I do a get CIM session now, and I'm just going to format this as a table, you can see I have the first session to member using the WSMAN protocol, and the second session to Win7 using the decom protocol. So this is how you can actually get the CIM commands to work both with new computers that have WSMAN enabled and down-level computers that only have the old WMI way enabled. Get CIM instance class. Oh, come on. Win32 operating system. I'm waiting for tab completion. There we go. And instead of giving it a computer name, I'm going to give it 2 CIM sessions. And from that, let's select the, let's do the PS computer name. Let's do version, build number, service pack, major version, and OS architecture. Oh, and just for fun, let's format it as a table. So because I created those session objects, I have a running connection now to both computers, and that's why this command ran so quickly. The overhead of creating the session has already been done. I'm able to use one command, a single get sim instance, to talk to both a new and an old computer because it's talking over a connection I've already brought up. The session worries about the protocol and the communications. Get sim instance just utilizes it. And so I get my PS computer name, so I know the name of each computer. I can see what version of Windows each one is running. I can see the build number, service pack version, and the fact that they're both running a 64-bit operating system. This is really, really powerful stuff. Normally when you use get sim instance with a computer name, it has to spin up the session, operate it, and then it shuts down the session. So there's a little bit more overhead. This way, just like when I use sessions for regular remoting, this way it stays up and running. I can change this command. Let's take these properties off to use a different class. And it's still nearly instantaneous because those sessions are already up and running. I can continue to query as much WMI stuff as I want to from the repository, and it happens really, really fast. So it's a huge benefit of having those there. Now, I can always run get sim session, pipe it to remove sim session, and I've now closed those. If I try and run my get sim instance again, it fails because it, good error message, cannot access a disposed object. I disposed of the object, or removed it, the session that is. So the session no longer exists, therefore no more connectivity. Now let's take a look at the help for get sim instance real quick. There's a lot of parameter sets in this one, so it's going to take me a second to spin through. You can see in some of these I'm allowed to use a computer name, whereas in others I'm allowed to use a sim session. What you won't see here, here's another one that uses sim session. There's sim session. So you see all these alternate kind of between a version that offers computer name and a version that offers sim session. None of them offer a session option. In other words, get sim instance, computer name, win7.lab.pri, class 132, logical disk. We already said this won't work. Windows 7 doesn't talk the WSMan protocol. There's no session option for me to make it use DCOM. The only way to get DCOM to work with the sim commands is to manually create a session first. So like I did here, now I've got a session running. And I can tell the sim instance to use that session, and that session will use DCOM because that's how I set it up. But I cannot manually tell get sim instance to use DCOM. If you don't give it a session, if you only give it a computer name, then it must use WSMan. You also can't mix and match. I'm going to try and type computer name now and go to member.lab.pri, and I'm getting an error. And here's why. Help get sim instance. There is no parameter set that has both a computer name parameter and a sim session. It's one or the other. So either you are going to connect to computer names, which means it's going to use the WSMan protocol, which means remoting has to be enabled, which means it needs to be running PowerShell version 3 because that's where sim came into play, or you can point it at one or more sim sessions. Those can mix and match. You can easily do that. So does that mean if you need to contact 50 computers, you have to manually spin up 50 sessions? Well, yes, you do, but it doesn't have to be as manual as you might think. Let's look at help new sim session. New sim session can take multiple computer names. So, for example, I could say, you know what, let's remove that session I've got up there. Get sim session, remove sim session. I'm also going to remove the variable win7 and member, just to get everything kind of cleared out, and we'll start over. Let's call this one WSMan, new sim session, computer name, dc.lab.pri, member.lab.pri. DCOM, new CIM session, computer name, win7.lab.pri. So you see, I can use a single CIM session command to create multiple sessions over a single protocol. That DCOM one is not going to work. I forgot to put my session option. New CIM session option, protocol, DCOM. Now if you look, I actually did something kind of stupid there. I've got my two WSMANs to DC and member. I've also got a WSMAN session going over to Win7. So apparently remoting is at least partially set up there. And I've got this one. This is not sitting in a variable. I had originally put the WSMAN session to Win7 into this variable, but I replaced it when I ran the DCOM version. So what I'm going to do, just to clean things up, is I'm going to get CIM session ID 6, that's the WSMAN one, going to Win7, and remove it. Now let's do a get CIM session. There's my 3. Get CIM instance, class Win32, computer system, CIM session. Let's give it WSMAN, and let's try giving it DCOM at the same time. If you're going to give it, so because WSMAN has already got more than one item in it, I can't give it another, right? If I do this, that's a list of 2 things, except that WSMAN is actually already 2 things, so it won't work. I can do that. And it's certainly possible to combine these and these so that I get one list of everything in it. I could stick them all in the same variable. In fact, let's try that. I'm just curious if this syntax will work. Does WSMAN now have 3 things in it? It does. And now if I try this against WSMAN, I get all 3 things. So you can batch these things together. Now, the idea behind these CIM sessions is, again, to save you some time. If I just close my shell session here, I will lose access to these sessions. They will remain running on the remote computer for a short period of time until it times them out, but I will not be able to get to them. If I open up a new window and run get CIM session, you see I have nothing. So these sessions aren't a computer-wide thing here on my local computer. They exist entirely within this PowerShell instance, or run space is what it's called. So I only have access to them here. It's a polite thing to do to clean up after yourself. Do a remove CIM session now before you close down your shell and start doing something else. So I've shown you some tricks for managing CIM sessions and really focused on how to create sessions that use either the WSMAN or DCOM protocols. And once you've created those sessions, how to use them in combination so that you can query multiple different levels of computer all in the same operation. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.